All right, let's bring in Chris Mannix, kind enough to join us. Got a busy schedule, busy morning. The Sports Illustrated NBA senior writer. What did you make of last night's win, or should I say loss, by the Lakers?
Well, I mean, you start with Denver once again showing that they have a poise that belies their years. I mean, this is a different setting, a different opponent, but the same Nuggets team that responds to resiliency. And, watching that fourth quarter, Dan, when you see LeBron start to come on and start to play the way he did, it's like when you watch what Tiger Woods used to do or Tom Brady used to do, where you assume that somebody else is going to lose. But for Jamal Murray to react the way he did and respond, it's just another, kind of layer or testament to Jamal Murray. I think for the Lakers, I mean, there are a bunch of different takeaways. One is that every game the Lakers have lost, they've shot like 28% or worse from three-point range. It was like 16, 17% in Portland game one, 27, 28% in game one against the Rockets. And last night it was like 23%. So there's a clear formula to beating the Lakers. Slow them down from three-point range, and you've got a good shot to beat them.
And I was talking about this in the first segment of this hour, and that is, you're in the bubble, so we've sort of taken away that ambiance that can intimidate a young team. And you're finding that a lot of these teams, the Celtics are young. The Heat has a lot of young players. Denver's a young team. They're not intimidated. Denver, to me, doesn't come back from 3-1 against the Clippers if they're actually playing in Los Angeles at Staples. But in the bubble, it's kind of neutralized that, and you sort of see this. They didn't look like they were panicked last night. I don't know if they can come back and win this, but I don't discount them, and it feels like it's easy to sort of slap them away and say, nah, you got no shot here. I thought LeBron and the Lakers looked tired last night, and I think because of these games that, there's no distance between, games 3 and games 4. And the bubble fatigue as well. I mean, I think there's a real, and you knew this, you were in the bubble, it can, kind of eat away at you here. But as you see the Lakers, as we move forward, any issues with this, that this is just a hiccup last night, or is there still a pattern there you're concerned about?
It's not so much a pattern that I'm concerned with the Lakers. It's just the Nuggets are really good and they're capable of winning this series. I mean, Denver's probably, sitting back going to practice today thinking we should be up 2-1. If we don't have a blown defensive coverage at the end of that game too, where, Mason Plumlee does something on that screen that he shouldn't have done, they could be up 2-1 this series and firmly in control. I think if you're the Lakers, in addition to finding ways to get your three-point shooters more open and more accurate, you've got to win the rebounding battle, right? Like you can't play Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, and Anthony Davis as many minutes as they do and get beat 44-25 on the glass. I think those three players, I believe, combined for 4 rebounds. Yeah. Like you just can't do that. If you're gonna play big, you better control the glass in the way they've done in previous series, or else you might as well play AD at 5 for the duration of these games.
I call this a pivotal game 4 tonight with the Heat and Celtics. Nobody calls it a pivotal game 4, Mannix, but I do. But I think that if the Heat win tonight, that they're winning this series. And if Boston wins tonight, I think Boston might be winning this series. Your thoughts?
So strong take there, Dan.
Thank
pivotal
you.
Game 4.
Yes.
I like that.
Thank you.
If Boston loses, I don't discount them from coming back. I think a lot of people got wrapped up after game 2 in some of the emotion the Celtics showed. And there was a lot of comparisons I read about last year's team. Last year's team genuinely didn't like each other, like did not want to be around each other. This year's team is totally different. That, losing game 2 the way they did, that frustration combined with being in the bubble for 2+ months, it just all kind of boiled over. This year's team likes each other, plays well with each other, and is capable of winning any single game in the series. I think this game 4, though, comes down to Jimmy Butler in a lot of ways. I mean, Jimmy Butler is like kind of a slow starting car. Like he kind of gets it going early in the first 3 quarters. And in the fourth, he's going all the way, trying to get his shots and trying to take over in games. He's averaged, Dan, in the regular season around 12, 13 shots per game. He's averaged in the postseason around 12, 13 shots per game. I think for Miami to win, he's got to average more than that. He's got to be in the high teens, maybe even the low 20s to prevent Miami from getting into another one of these big holes that they can't shoot themselves out of. So I look to see how aggressive Jimmy Butler is in game 4, and that will dictate how this game goes.
Butler is sort of the opposite of Paul George, that he gets started in the last 6 minutes of the game, whereas playoff Paul sort of disappears then. That brings me to the Clippers. I start to look at the makeup of this team, and maybe we're on the same page. Denver will be a better team next year. Portland will be a better team. Golden State will be a better team. Lakers will probably be status quo, if not a little better. And then the Rockets might be better or status quo, which leads me to the Clippers. What do the Clippers do? Because is this roster good enough that they have this year to win a championship next year?
I do think it is. And I think it would be panicking to make any kind of substantial changes. I think the Clippers, their biggest offseason issue is going to be being able to afford key role players like Montrezl Harrell, who's going to get a big offer this summer or this offseason, and Marcus Morris, who's going to get at least a solid 1-year offer from somebody this offseason. Steve Ballmer is going to have to reach deep into his pockets to, come up with the kind of money needed to pay the luxury tax that this team is going to have to pay. But I don't think you change a single thing. I was as disappointed as anyone by the Clippers. You can't lose a series when you're up 3-1. Simple as that, especially not when you have a player like Kawhi Leonard. But given the strangeness of this season and the problems the Clippers had when they got to the bubble, with so many guys being missing early on, with Montrezl Harrell not even playing until game 1 of this series, I don't think your reaction to this loss is let's change everything. Now, next season, no doubt, Dan, the biggest season in the history of the Clippers franchise. If they don't at least get to the finals, you could see that team broken up. I mean, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard can become free agents. Doc Rivers, an enormous season for him. I had a GM text me that said Doc Rivers has taken this team exactly as far as Vinny Del Negro has. Like, he has got to take that team deep and prove that he's that championship caliber coach they thought they were getting. Next season is everything. That's all the marbles. But I don't think this season you make a change. It's just too many outside the box, unthinkable variables happened that interrupted this season.
Billy Donovan to the Bulls. How surprising.
Not surprising. I had talked to Billy briefly after Oklahoma City lost in that game 7. And I never got the sense that he wanted to get out of coaching for a year, take a break, or even go back to college. I think Billy Donovan wanted to be associated with a team with a plan. And at that point, Oklahoma City, which wanted him back, they didn't really have a plan. They still don't really have a plan for how that team's going to move forward. Are they going to keep Chris Paul and build around him? Are they going to trade Chris Paul, blow the whole thing up, and start from scratch? Remember, Billy Donovan took over that team in 2015, and they were a championship contender. They had Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. 5 years later, I don't know what they are. The Bulls are not a good team right now, but they're a team with the plan. They've got Arturas Karnisovich, a very respected top basketball executive, leading things now. They've got good young talent, and Zach LaVine, Lowry Markkanen, Wendell Carter, guys like that. And just as important, in the summer of 2021, when Otto Porter comes off the books, some other contracts come off the books, they can be players in free agency. And a good Chicago team is going to be an appealing place to go for some free agents. So the Bulls aren't perfect, but at least they're a team with a plan, and that's what appealed to Billy Donovan.
But where do we stand with Philadelphia? Where do we stand with New Orleans? Where do we stand with Indiana? Are they waiting for the playoffs to be over at looking at other candidates?
Possibly. It's a little surprising that Philadelphia hasn't moved on Tyronn Lue right now. I think Ty Lue just makes too much sense for that situation. He's a guy that has a proven track record, not just in winning championships or a championship, but in dealing with big egoed players, right? Like, he coached the Lakers or coached the Cavaliers with LeBron. He's been on Doc Rivers' staff in many different stops, coaching big name stars. He can handle the challenge that is Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. It makes me wonder what Philadelphia is doing if they haven't acted on that. I think with Indiana and New Orleans, it's a lot of Mike D'Antoni mixed in there. I think Mike D'Antoni is a strong candidate for both jobs, and it may come down to which team makes him the best financial offer.
Before I let you go, next season, when do you think next season gets started?
I've said for weeks now, Dan, I think Martin Luther King Day, January 18th, is a reasonable starting point. I think the NBA would love to start on Christmas, but as you heard Adam Silver say, December just doesn't seem likely. And that has everything to do with the union not wanting to rush this season start after finishing in mid-October. Martin Luther King Day, you can start that day. It's a good starting point for the NBA. I don't think they go a full 82 games. I mean, everybody in the league office I've talked to has said, we don't want to compete with the Olympics. That means getting out in mid-July is paramount. So if I had to guess right now, and as we all know, it's incredibly fluid, I would say January 18th, and it's a 60-something game season that gets the league done by early to mid-July at the latest.
But are we looking at the potential for another bubble season?
Not a bubble season, but if the NBA doesn't believe they can get back in their buildings, they will do regional bubbles.
Yeah.
I mean, the league has regular conference calls with NBA general managers, and the ones I've talked to have said, look, this is right now for where we're at with everything going on, regional bubbles is atop the list. Like, that's what we're planning towards in the beginning of the season. Now, 3 months from now, if we get into December and there's a vaccine and there's a window to getting fans back in the stands in February, everything changes. But right now, they're looking at regional bubbles, and we've talked about this before, where it's 1 month in, a week to 10 days out, rinse, wash, repeat until you can get things back to normal.
Oh, what is normal? Thank you, Chris. We appreciate it. We know you got a busy day. Thank you.
I'm in my kitchen, Dan. There's nothing normal.
Yeah, but you don't do anything in your kitchen other than do interviews. You don't cook, right?
It's not true. I put salami on wheat bread at least once a day.
What's in your refrigerator right now?
Salami.
That's
lots
it.
of it.
And beer.
Over 3 pounds of salami, beer, and Sobe water. That's it, basically.
You live the dream. You live the dream, man.
It is something.
You're inspiring all of those kids who want to grow up to be an NBA reporter. You're really inspiring them right now. This is how you live.
Be about that life.
Thank you, bud. That's Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated NBA senior writer.